say about tram driving, I felt like I was going back to work, to be honest. It took 2 weeks to train me as a tram driver at Seaton, and a couple of times I thought, why am I doing this? Because, of course, it's, as you all appreciate, it's run to the same rules as any other railway. And there were some little quirks of the tramway that were quite interesting to me. And they're the things perhaps that I had to struggle to remember, because a lot of the other stuff about trackside safety, Mike will be, familiar with all of this. All of that stuff's pretty standard. You know, the red tail lights, the white headlights, high vi on when you're on the track, about the 4 foot and the 6 foot and that sort of stuff. But I must admit, one that I did struggle for the first week to try and remember was the hand signals, because of course it's a single track tramway, just over 3 miles long, and you've got loops. I struggled to remember the names of the loops at first because I wasn't familiar with it, and I struggled to remember the hand signals. But basically, I don't know how many of you are familiar with trams, but of course they have to pass at certain loops, otherwise you end up with a cornfield arrangement where they come head to head, which is less than desirable. I don't think you'd have much chance of hitting each other unless you were on the bends near Seaton, but that's run by a staffing system. So providing you got the staff and you followed the rules, that's unlikely. But they do have occasions, of course, where they do end up with a cornfield. So that could be quite interesting when you've got 20, 30, 40 people on a tram all facing someone else. But what they do is, if you're on your own, which you normally are, you're not running in tandem, as you get to a loop, you do a cutthroat signal to the other driver, and then they have to wave at you. They can't give you a thumbs up because that means something else, but I'll come to that. So if you give them that, they then wave at you, and then you wait for their response. So a cutthroat is that you're running on your own, there's no tram behind you. If you give them a V, not that way round, that way round, that means you're running in tandem. And it means that there's another tram running with you in tandem, but it might not be visible, of course, because it might be behind the trees, or might not have come across the level crossing or something. So if they give you a 2, again, you acknowledge it with a wave. And if they give you this, if they give you this, it means that there's a tram running a loop behind. So you go 1 and this. And that means there's another tram not running in tandem with you, but running a loop behind. So if you're in, say, Axmouth loop going northbound, that means there'll be another tram that's going to pass you when the southbound head south, is going to pass you at Riverside loop, which is the first loop as you come north from Seaton. So there's these hand signals to remember. And also the thumbs up. The reason you can't give a thumbs up as an acknowledgement to these signals is that the thumbs up, the line runs, as I think most of you know, from Seaton up through Polley Ford, which used to be a station a halt basically on the branch line in the old days, to Collyton. And at Polley Ford, it crosses the main road on a level crossing. It's an ungated crossing, and there's obviously a procedure to go through this crossing. But up to Polley Ford from Seaton, they have white indicator lights on each of the loops that basically come on briefly when your overhead trolley pole goes through the frog and passes onto the correct wire. So you just have to watch for this white light, and that means your trolley pole is on the right wire, is followed the right wire. When you go north of the Polley Ford, there are still loops. There's two more loops up there. But there's no white light. So you have to manually, if you're on your own and there's no tram coming the other way into the loop, you have to stick your head out of the side of the tram while you're coasting to check that your trolley pole's on the right wire. But if there's a tram coming in the opposite direction, the practice is that the other driver will look, apart from giving you the hand signals, the cutthroat or the V or the loop behind, the other driver will give you a thumbs up, which again you acknowledge through a wave, to give you a thumbs up to say that the trolley pole of your trolley is on the correct wire, to save you looking up. So that was a bit of a new one to me. And the staff that they operate between Riverside, which is where the depot is by the River Axe, again, that's on the old track bed. But the section between Riverside and Seaton has 3 bends in it, basically right angled bends almost. And they use a staff system. So when you are coming out of Seaton, you have to push the staff into the apparatus to get the white light. And if you're running on your own, you take the staff with you. If you're running in tandem, you leave the staff behind for the second tram to take the staff. And then you drop the staff off at Riverside. And of course, all you've got to do to actually get onto that section effectively is push the staff into the little hole to give you the white light to leave Seaton or to leave Riverside. But what often happens, of course, is that people generally forget to take the staff, or they leave the staff, or they take it, vice versa. So they have to invoke some other procedure. And of course, it's the usual embarrassment on the radio when you find out someone has either taken the staff or not taken the staff. Yeah, a couple of little quirks of the tramway. And I must admit, for a simple tramway, I must admit there was quite a lot to learn. And I think there's, I haven't mastered it yet, but I think they've got 14 trams, 16 trams there. One of them's currently not in service. And all of them have their little quirks. Some have got air brakes, some have got electric brakes, all of them have got hand brakes, and they all perform differently, unlike the underground, where every train of the modern trains just performed exactly the same. I think Mike would confirm that on modern locos to an extent, but these old babies, some of them are 100+ years old, of course, all perform differently. So there we are. But it's been a bit of a learning curve, and I'm going back Tuesday for another dose, just to have a day to try and put some of my skills into practice with some willing punters. And I'm going to be running what they call a service extra. So I'll be following one of the service trams in a tandem arrangement and picking up the extras. I think I'm going out in the Blackpool boat. I can't remember the tram numbers yet, but one of them is their version of a Blackpool boat. It's splendid, it is. And there we are. So any questions before I drone on too much?
That's an interesting job, isn't it?
Well, it's I have to pay to go there for the privilege.
Like it.
I said I'm going to set, being as I obviously on the underground, I was in Aslef. I threatened to set up an Aslef branch in Seaton because there's a few piss takes there. 25 minutes for lunch if you're lucky. You've got to turn up at 9. You might not get away till 6 if you're lucky. You've got to pick up. You've got to clean the tram. What's all that about? A driver cleaning the bloody vehicle? Would you do that, Mike? Bloody there with a sponge and a spray gun, and oh my God! And you get a uniform, and I said you get free travel in Devon, but you don't. You get free travel on the tramway. That's about your lot. And you get a co-op milkman's uniform for those of you who remember the co-op. But I'm not wearing the cap.
John, do you want me to send you a copy of the LU train operators framework?
Go on then. I'll take it in with me, Alan.
Good idea.
I've already told Gareth that I'm gonna. A lot of them are paid drivers, so they're all quite keen to hear about this union arrangement. I reckon a branch will go down a tree.
You were saying about taking the token. Is it interlocks like a full size railway system, or is it just like?
No, it's nothing as fancy, mate. If you don't take the token, you might not know. One time, a bloke got all the way to Collyton, and he realised he had the token when he shouldn't have had the token. So yeah, it can. In that respect, no, there's no interlocking. It relies on people remembering. And the thing is, there's a lot of older blokes there, and some of them one or two of them I met, and I thought they'd been there for years. And one old boy, bless him, the other day, I said, "Oh, how long have you been here?" He said, "Oh, over 10 years." He said, "But I can't really cope anymore." I mean, they do have to do an annual exam, of course. They have to be checked, but bless them, some of them do forget quite regularly, and you can hear it all on the radio. And of course, the embarrassment is supreme on a radio, like it used to be on the underground. But no, it's good fun, and they're a good crowd. But I think I get the impression that once you get your feet under the table, so to speak, and you don't muck up, then you go into Gareth, the ops manager, and you say, "Look, I think you ought to put me on the payroll." And what they do for newbies, I think relatively new staff, is they'll pay you 50% of your shifts, and the other 50% you work as a volunteer, and you have to do minimum of 21 days a year. And of course, the operating year is only about 8 months, along with some specials in the evening. But yeah, it's certainly different.
It is an odd question for you, John. I'm just actually looking at the Seaton Tramway website and came across this diagram. I'll just share it. Is the track layout actually like that at the shed?
Yeah, the track layout. I actually stand at the shed. It's quite interesting, that shed, because the shed actually sits on the old bed of the branch, just ahead of where the station platforms would have been.
So that side,
but yeah, the actual track arrangement, because they extended the shed a few years ago, apparently they put an extra bit on the front of it, and the shed has only got 2 overhead wires, but it's got 4 roads.
Right.
So they don't allow any drivers. You're not allowed, under fear of being shot, you're not allowed to go beyond the stop sign, which is effectively on your diagram. It's where those 2 dots are, that top middle dot. You're not allowed to go beyond that. You have to stop there and leave it before you basically hit the points. Right. And that is the arrangement. It's quite an interesting point arrangement, but I think it's a legacy of the fact that they've modified the shed and lengthened it. And so that one of the reasons is, of course, they've only got 2 overhead wires, so they have to. When you take a tram in, you have to be careful. They have to be careful to put it on the single wire that's in there. Well, it goes on the single wire, and they can't get the way the doors are set up. They have to move the doors so that they can't pull all the doors right back and use the whole entrance in one hit. They have to have a 50-50 arrangement on the doors, because otherwise they foul the trams. So basically, the shed is, I think you could say, it's overflowing, and the clearances in there are very minimal. Yeah,
I saw that diagram. I thought that can't be right, but there's a picture somewhere, and it actually saw something like that. So yeah, just ask the question.
Yeah, no, it's quite it's tight, to say the least. I'll show you an engineering train. This is one I sent to Roger the other day, because this is something you wouldn't normally see. This is the only bit of proper railway arrangement that happens there. Bear with me. Here we go. Oh. This is they run this normally before service to do the overhead wires, etc. That's a nice shunt, isn't it? The guy's shunting those wagons back in towards the depot. There we are. But yeah, an interesting arrangement, and they're doing a lot of replacement of the poles. You have to take the power off when you go over the well, we used to call them traction current sections on the underground, but they've got a different name for them. But obviously, as you go over, as your trolley pole goes between the different sections, because they've got a number of the old Southern Railway concrete line side huts that are absolutely chock-a-block with batteries, because they're taking the mains and converting it to 120 volts DC through these little batteries. So every I can't remember how many there are. Must be at least 6 or 8 sections on there, and of course you have to do the same when you're going through the frogs over the points, because these little carbon blocks that they fit into the top of the trolley pole. I think they were 10 each, and they go through them like pencil leads, apparently, which you'd expect, wouldn't you? But yeah, that's the works train with the cement mixer and the digger, and they've actually got a track tamper now, apparently, because the track's a bit ropey. I think 13 mile an hour is a bit keen. Anything more than that, and you're going to be thrown about. There we are. Any other questions? I won't drone on.
Oh, as long as you enjoy it, John, this was important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something to do in retirement, isn't it? That's why Alan's not retiring. Everyone's frightened they'll be bored, aren't they?
Potentially.
Another 3 or 4 years, maybe.
Oh, tighten up the pot.
Well, you don't like it that much because you're not looking to model it. So
No, that's true.
Interesting. Cheers for the input.
Right, we've got
so if Lidwell want a day out at Pico Rama and a hire of a tram, because you can hire your own trams, of course. You can hire a tram for a trip up and a trip back. They do Halloween trams, because you could always come as you are, Paul. They wouldn't have to get anyone to dress up.
Charming. And how many rooms have you got at home to put us up then? Use the garage like I do, or do you just got spare bedrooms?
Oh, I'm sure we could arrange something. Put a big tent up. Yeah, usual caravan arrangement.
Lidwell Southwest.
Yes. Yes. Mind you, they're chock-a-block. All the campsites down here are absolutely chock-a-block. There's tourists everywhere. Bringing COVID down here again. Hey, can't move.
Everyone can just stay at Tom's place. He's got a big enough place.
Yeah. That's a field though, isn't it? Or has he got a barn or two?
I think he's got a few barns as well. So he's got a bus, so everyone can just stay on the
He's
bus.
got the bus, of course, yeah. Perfect.
I know what John feels like with the tourists. Even
Yeah.
our farmers in their tractors are catching up with caravans and shaking their fists saying, "Can't you go to bloody Devon? There's not come here."
Charming.
No, it's heaving down. When we come back on our bikes this morning, it was heaving down the front, even though it's a cloudy day, isn't it? We've still got the cruise ships out here. We've got the Queen Mary II has been out here for months, absolute months, still sitting here. But they reckon they've got 120 crew on board all the time, because of course they have to keep all the pumps running and the compressors, and they have to turn the taps every day. And when we go out with the sailing club, we often go round them, and you get them on the radio. Sounds like they're all ready to throw themselves off the ship, because it must be quite boring sitting there for months on end, mustn't it?
Yeah. Well, we've got about 6 minutes till the next session. We can either have a little drink break or personal break while Clive